Hi, I'm Nick from Acting Coach Scotland, and today I wanted to do a short video for you to talk about a common question that I get asked with students that I'm coaching for drama school auditions, and that's about how do I make sure that my monologues are contrasting. So it's something that people worry a lot about, and probably too much, to be honest. But here's some tips for you to think about what makes a contrast work in two different monologues or several. So first of all, you got to ask yourself, why is it important to have a contrast? Well, the audition panel are probably looking to get some kind of idea of your dynamic range of energy and emotional bandwidth, let's say. Bandwidth is a good word to think about. So they're hoping that in the choices that you'll make, they'll get to see different sides to your acting ability, or let's call it behaviour. Most think about contrasts as being comedic and dramatic, and I think that's a little bit oversimplistic and it's a bit misleading. Of course, something that is comedic in nature may contrast to something that's dramatic just by its very nature, but it's not necessarily what you should be aiming for. There's more subtle ways to think about it. So you can think about contrasting in terms of tone or style or subject, and more importantly, delivery. So comedic, dramatic, not such a big issue. Contemporary and classical doesn't indicate necessarily a contrast either. So what do people get stressed about? So the person I was working with yesterday said to me, well, I don't know if these monologues contrast enough because they're both quite intense. Well, you need to think of intensity as energy, right? And your monologues, both monologues or all of your monologues, need to have a dynamic range of intensity. So it's inevitable that there'll be intense moments in all of your monologues, and if there isn't, there should be. So think of intensity as more of an energy thing rather than the drama itself, okay? So I like to think about contrasts in your monologues in terms of how you're behaving, what you're doing, okay? So you've got to know what the character wants. That's really important. And then how are you going to go and get that one? How is the character going to achieve it? Or more specifically, how are you as an actor going to use the scene and your behavior to achieve that character one, okay? So think about tasks. We use that language a lot in ACS. We've actually developed a really good set of sheets called the mindset sheets, which lay out a number of different tasks that you can do in the scene and a description of the mindset for it. So if you'd like a copy of that list, no problem, just email hello@actingcoachscotland.co.uk and we'll send it to you. So some examples of tasks, they would be to get someone to take responsibility. That might be your task in the scene. You might want to get someone to let you off the hook. Another contrasting task would be prevent a terrible mistake, perhaps, or get reassurance, or to get someone to make a commitment. These are all very active things, and notice the thing that connects them is it's stuff you're doing to the other person. Don't get too wrapped up in your own character's head and forget the purpose of why you're there, which is inevitably to change the status quo, which is more active. So these tasks are active. They tend to be focused on the other. Even though it's a monologue, often it's a conversation between two people, remember? And contrasting tasks are a great way to make sure that the monologues themselves contrast, okay? So that's one big thing that I would say you need to look at. The other one is about your emotional journey. So where does your character's emotional journey start and where does it finish? And where does your character go along the way, okay? So some examples might be they begin doubtful, and then they end up confident, or they start the monologue hurt and they end up resilient. There should always be an emotional journey. There's two different types, but we'll go into that in another video. But there should always be a change, otherwise you get stuck on the same level, and we don't want that. So if you're worrying about whether the monologues contrast, one thing you could do, apart from focus on what's your task, is, well, what emotional journey am I going on, and then are those emotional journeys different in between each of the pieces? Other things you can think about that might help decide whether things are contrasting enough are topics or themes, whether you're formal or informal, whether your character has low or high status maybe, even whether the scene is set in a public or a private space, because that can make a difference to your behaviour. You can think about physicality differences, of course vocal tone differences. I would say, word of warning though, don't get too wrapped up in accents as a way of showing a contrast, because unless you're super confident and really skilled at an accent, and why would you be really if you need to go and have drama school training, but some people have got a natural ear for it, I suppose. Unless you're super confident and it's super accurate, I would avoid it, because it can distract from your performance. So don't rely on an accent to give the measure of contrast. So I suppose in summary, one more thing you could do to make sure your piece is contrast is you could write a table and you could make a list of similarities and differences between your pieces. So that about covers the main areas of focus that might help you avoid speeches that are, or monologues that are too similar. And I hope that is helpful to you. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to email us, and we'll get back to you with some help if we can. And please hit subscribe and join the channel. Thanks very much.